Hey everybody, Mark Asley and Dr. Avivi. We are here, we're back, and we're ready to talk about the intersection between psychodynamic psychology and organizational development. We're excited this week to bring you a really cool topic. We're going straight for the heart of the matter. We're going to be talking about how your family dynamics show up in the workplace. So Adi just sent me a wonderful article right before this about this very topic. You want to tell us a little bit about that article?
Yeah, it's an article by Seth David Berenstein from 2013. It was in the Journal of Management of Organization. And I really liked it because it was talking about the concept of transference. And transference is this psychodynamic concept that means lots of things, but generally, just very, very lightly what it means is that we have a set of responses, expectations, and emotions that are tied to old events. How we were treated as children, what emotional effect others had on us when we were younger. And then when we grow up, we might respond to others who remind us of these situations, of these others, in a way that's a little extreme in comparison to what is called for in the situation. So if Mark reminds me of my brother and my brother mistreated me, I might be super sensitive to anything that Mark says. And even a benign remark might bring up a lot of sadness or anger or frustration for me. Typically, when we look at transference, we talk about transference in the clinical work, in the therapy room. However, it might also be present in the workplace. And it's important to differentiate it from emotions that come up because there's a tense situation or a lot of work stress or a deadline, or maybe there is a real clash between personalities, like two people who just don't see eye to eye. That's not necessarily transference. Because we are psychologists, because we are mental health providers, and we are thinking dynamically, we want to look into that particular way of understanding tensions or issues that might come up in the workplace. And one thing that Bernstein says that I loved and I thought was so brilliant is that what happens to us when we're children, what happens in the family is we have an existential question. And that question is, am I lovable? Am I lovable? We test with our behaviors, with our cognitions, with our emotions, with our bodies. Does my parent love me? Are they giving me attention? Are they approving of how I'm behaving? Do they like what I do? Am I amusing to them? Am I important to them? What's my place? Am I more important than my siblings? Am I also important when they have friends around? Am I lovable is my core existential quest as a child. The way Bernstein translates it to what we do in the workplace is, am I competent? And I thought that was really great because what happens to us in the workplace is that we keep checking, am I competent? Am I effective? Am I doing a good job? Do other people think I'm competent? Do they see that I'm competent? Do they think I'm incompetent? That's kind of like that's like unlovable in work terms. And I thought that was a really beautiful distinction. And the ways that you felt lovable or unlovable at home will translate themselves to how you feel competent and incompetent in the workplace. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit into this video today.
Absolutely. One of the greatest little phrases that I use with some people I work with is if it's hysterical, it's historical. And that's a great way of, seeing if transference is at play here, right? If something that doesn't really affect most people really throws you for a loop, and even better, if it brings back old memories, right, or old associations, right, then it's likely a transference situation. It's the idea of your family history, your family roles are coming online, right, from usually a traumatized part of the brain, coming online, hijacking your brain, and in many ways, mind controlling you, kind of forcing you to work and to act and to behave in a certain way. And it's really common for transference reaction to last a long time. You might have a fight with a boss and not really feel yourself for a week, two, maybe even a month or so later because it triggers that old part of your brain. You were talking about this idea of competency and love, and another way of looking at it is this idea of fairness, right? As kids, we're always monitoring where fairness is, and as kids, we're kind of simple. So the resources that we care about is time, affection, and attention, right? Whereas in a workplace, the resources seem to get more complicated, right? There's money, there's time off, but really it is ultimately time, attention, and affection. And as we're monitoring these resources, we're trying to see, am I getting my fair share? And if I'm not, maybe I'm not lovable, like Adi was saying, right? Or maybe I'm not competent. And once those feelings start to take root, it can throw us into these old patterns. So we're going to go through, the 6 most common family roles. And I would love it if, as you're listening, if any of them, ring out to you, hit us with a like, comment, let us know if any of these stand out to you, because we might do a more in-depth series on one of these roles if they are, very common within our viewership. So, number 1, we're going to talk about the wild child. So the wild child is the kid that doesn't follow any rules, right? The kid that is the troublemaker. Sometimes they use substances. Sometimes they, have extreme behavior. Sometimes they're playing hooky, right? They dress crazy, right? They're rebelling. These kids are often, in some ways, dysfunctional, but what is really important is that they are responding to this dysfunction of the family system, right? So in the work that Adi and I do a lot, these people are often called the identified patient. This is the person that, comes to treatment, right? The person that checks themselves into a rehab, that, calls up a therapist, that seeks executive coaching, right? The person that is like the problem. And, I think I can speak for Adi on this one. I know I do. I try to treat the whole system, right? We try to look at the whole system rather than blaming this wild child for what they've done or what their behavior and lifestyle is like. So as a family that's dysfunctional, it often thrives on having this kind of like, malignant is probably the worst word to use, but this kind of like dysfunctional harm-causing part, right? It allows other people to play out their roles, which we'll get into in a minute. And it also is kind of a flag, the canary in the coal mine, right? So in a workplace, this shows up pretty obviously if you're a manager, right? This is the person that, skips work. This is the person that maybe drinks during work, right? That takes too many smoke breaks. This is the person that, might go out of their way and has like big fights or big blow-ups during team meetings, right? This is the person that everyone's like, oh my God, I can't stand, so-and-so, right? It's that person that is creating chaos in the workplace. And again, it's really important to note that it's not this person's fault per se. It is actually a symptom of a more dysfunctional system.
Yeah, I'll just say that it's really important as a manager to ask, is the workplace dysfunctional and this person symbolizes it? Or is this a wild card that isn't fitting in and can't, is this something that we need to change as a system? Or is this a person that isn't workable? And that requires understanding of your own emotions as a manager. And the person, if you're the wild card, ask yourself, what is making me behave this way at a job place? Because that doesn't last long. You will lose the job most likely. And so you need to ask yourself, is there something dysfunctional and I'm in a place that brings up my demons? Or do I have demons that regardless of where I am, I need to take care of? So I'm going to talk about a similar but a little bit of a different role, which is the scapegoat. In a family, the scapegoat is often the truth teller. If there is a system that isn't functional, there is some emotions that are not spoken about. There is unhealthy reliance of parents on children to manage their emotions, or maybe there is betrayal or cheating, or something is going on. Maybe there are family secrets. The scapegoat is often the child who says, this is what's going on. And that might be intolerable to others. And so people will often be angry at this kid. They will get a lot of the brunt. There would be the person who's blamed for problems. They'll be shushed, pushed away. And it's very hard for somebody who grew up with that role to recognize positive affirmations, to find another way of being. It's also, you might be somebody who can't let go. If there is a problem, if something isn't functional, it will be something that you're pulled to intervene in, to alert, to talk about. And again, you need to pay attention. Are you volunteering to be your workplace scapegoat because you're provocative in how you bring things about, because you are interacting with others, be that managers or colleagues, in a way that differentiate you from the rest? Sometimes we have something very valuable to say and we're not very skilled in how we bring it. And only you know, again, is this a dysfunctional workplace? Are there issues there that mean that you can't speak up, you can't say when something is wrong, it's not going to fly and you're going to be pushed away? Or maybe there is room for your input. The way you're bringing it in is problematic. And I do want to put a caveat here, especially at this time in the world. that a lot of time people who are marginalized or come from minority status are scapegoated not because they volunteered, and the way they bring things into the team or into the awareness of manager is stigmatized and is called is portrayed in a negative way because it's not easy for people from the majority to hear out the minority voice, and it might be really policed. So again, pay attention. Is this really something that you can change, or are you being treated as the scapegoat because there are either societal or workplace dynamics that are pushing you to that role?
Yeah, totally. I think that's really important to highlight that, there are bigger things going on oftentimes in these systems. And I was, thinking as you were talking that all these roles assume a dysfunctional system, right? Whether it be, the workplace, or I think in what you just said, the culture can also be dysfunctional, right? It can generate some of these roles independently of the workplace. The next role I want to talk about is the enabler. So the enabler is the person that is, creating peace, that is trying to, cover up all the problems, that is, providing. I study Buddhism, and the idea is idiot compassion is a word that comes with Buddhism a lot, right? This idea of like, it's okay, you're fine, everybody loves you, don't worry about like over validation, that is covering up people's mistakes. And as a child, we often do this sometimes for our parents or for our siblings as a way to avoid conflict and to create what we think is a happy, peaceful environment. But it often has this kind of like, deep-rooted poison in a way, deep-rooted toxicity that just gets, covered up with layers of niceness, right? In a workplace, right, very similar, right? The person that, covers shift for the person that is, lagging behind. Maybe someone who's lying for another team member, right? Saying, oh yeah, no, they weren't at work today. Or like, oh, they were working really hard while they know they were kind of slacking off or that they were not being involved. Managers actually are often enablers, right? It's people that kind of sacrifice their own needs in order to make sure that the team appears happy, right? Appears like a happy family, even though there's dysfunction underneath. So enabling is really common. I think I would say American culture really like enables enabling. We're really all about not talking about what's really going on and having more of this like happy, Stepford wife situation, Ken and Barbie thing going on. And it's something to really look out for. I think it shows up in almost all workplaces. I think everywhere I've worked, there's been an enabler. There's been the person that just wants everyone to have a good time, right? Everyone to like be nice, and everyone to have no conflict. Really, really common, and again, often gets directly in the way, acts as resistance to seeing the underlying organizational issues.
Yeah, I think that those are excellent points. It is a very, very common role to have. And I think one way that now in kind of popular culture, it might be called the toxic positivity kind of cure to things, or validating the invalid. And you might do that because if you actually spoke the truth, then the elephant in the room will be uncovered and there will be a kind of a flashlight or a spotlight on what's really going on. Of course, we can't change anything if we don't acknowledge that it is there. And all these roles are a way to not acknowledge that maybe there are things that could change. Those are indirect forms of communicating that there is a problem. I want to talk about yet another role, the mascot or the clown. So this is in the family, it's kind of like the funny kid that always like cracks jokes, does silly things, create a comic relief, being silly. A lot of time, this is somebody who is very unaware of their own emotions, very detached from their emotional space, perhaps very anxious, because if any emotions come up, they get scared. Maybe they're scared of conflict, of sadness, of retaliation. So they try to bring laughter and joking into the mix so that tensions are diffused without directly addressing them. And the way it will look in the workplace is actually quite similar to what it would look like at home. This would be somebody who cracks a joke, sometimes inappropriate, sometimes just in a weird moment. And what they do is they diffuse the tension short term, but they don't allow the team to address the fact that there is a tension and resolve it deeply and long term. That could be somebody that people might really like, or they can be really annoying to people because there is a sense of like they're hijacking something, they're preventing something from happening. And I do want to, you know what, I'll let us do all the roles and then I'll say something general about the roles just to wrap it up. So I'm going to move it back to you for the next role.
Yeah, totally. Um, I was just also thinking as you were saying that it's common, maybe this is what you were going to say, but it's common that many people inherit multiple roles. So as you're listening, is that what you're going to say?
No, something. I just wanted to talk about how you might create it or detect it, or
Oh,
like
yeah.
think it's there. But I'll say that in the end.
Okay.
You let's finish the role first.
There's nothing. Yeah, you might have multiple roles. As you're listening, you might be like, oh, yeah, I'm like the mascot and the scapegoat. And that's also common, right? Especially if you have a family that doesn't have 6 kids. These roles are going to show up and we can move between them. Although there tends to be one, maybe two that are kind of your home role. And that's the one that's likely to get triggered in the workplace when you get these transfer situations. So that's what I'm going to talk about is the one that's my home role, the one I tend to be in most of the time, which is the hero. So the hero is often called the golden child, right? Sometimes it's the oldest born. It's this idea of being a perfectionist, which we talked about in one of our last series, doing everything right. And the shadow side is one, taking credit for everything, right? Needing to be acknowledged and being praised almost consistently. And two, always needing an adversary, right? Because a hero is nothing without a villain. So there's this grandiosity that kind of comes with the hero role of needing to be the main character in the story, right? Needing to, overcome difficulty, needing to, crush opposition, needing to like be a shining star. And while this can look sometimes like enabler behavior, right, of like trying to make everything peaceful, the difference here is that the hero wants everything to be peaceful and they also want to be above it, right? It's like they need to also know that like they are the best. And this shows up in the workplace, of course, as someone that is trying to work extra hard, right? Someone that is taking all the opportunities, someone that is dominating business meetings, somebody who is always asking like, okay, what's next promotion? How do I keep going? How do I keep advancing? Somebody that wants to again take credit for group projects, right? Or which is something that I can say I'm guilty of, someone that has trouble with authority above them because they can often be an adversary, right? Someone that needs this kind of struggle, this heroic journey in order to stay motivated and struggles just coasting, right? Or struggles just doing like, the bare minimum of a job or even what's expected at a job. They always want to be, kind of charging forward. I can say from my own experience, we're quite annoying to be around. And often make people feel...
That's not true, Mark. You're very loving.
You can feel insecure, people can feel jealous, and heroes very often will burn out because they tend to, under or overestimate their abilities and sign up for things that they're not quite ready for.
Yeah, I think one more thing is that the hypersensitivity to criticism, the real dread of making a mistake. Typically, it's because the hero might have been the favorite child of a dysfunctional family. All the good traits were kind of placed into them, and they were supposed to make the parents look shinier. So mistakes were not really tolerated, and it's a really problematic role for the individual. I'm going to talk a little bit about the lost child. The lost child is the last role we're going to talk about. And in a really problematic family, when things are really not working well, the lost child is the child that doesn't get much attention and also doesn't ask for much attention. Sometimes, I am not much for birth order. It could mean some things, not necessarily, but it might be the middle child. It could be the middle child who's like, not the hero of maybe the firstborn or the clown that might be the lastborn, might be the middle child, but that's not necessarily so. It's a child that really is kind of in the shadows, unseen. Maybe they're shy, or maybe they learn that the best way to survive whatever difficulties this family is encountering is by not being visible, by camouflaging themselves. And although it might be better for them in a way, especially if there's abuse or neglect in the family, children need attention. They really, really do need attention. So this might be somebody who really doesn't know how and in what way to take space, to have a voice. They might get confused by attention and really scared. And at work, it might come up as not taking initiative, being very passive, not asking for credit even when they do something, and maybe being a little socially avoidant. And that can be a very painful place to be. this person might be extremely talented and have a lot to add. They don't know how to bring themselves out. And even if others invite them in, they might not recognize it. And by saying that, I do want to say what I was like considering saying in the middle and decided to say in the end, that first of all, we might all have all these roles. And especially if we came from a family that's by and large pretty balanced and is not a very dysfunctional family, we might have all these roles in it because we all have parts, and these parts come up, especially when there is stress or conflict or difficulties. However, if we did have a very distinct role, if our family nominated us for one of these roles and we lived in that space, two things could happen to us. One, we might recreate in other groups, be that a social group or a workplace, the same scenario. Unconsciously and without really noticing, we will pull for certain responses and we will recreate our family drama at work. So we'll find ourselves being the hero or the scapegoat. And that might be really important for us to own our part. Say, what am I doing that puts me in this role? I know that it was a very dysfunctional workplace. I put myself in the scapegoat role. I screamed the truth about what I saw in this workplace very early on when I didn't have any cred and nobody knew me. And in a really Israeli way, this was in America. And that wasn't, I can say I'm Israeli, I am more direct than other people, but that was well into my acculturation. Something old came up. And I think it was actually a protective part because I couldn't continue working there. It wasn't the right place for me. But maybe there was a little less painful way to get out of there than becoming the scapegoat and everybody being angry at me all the time. That wasn't pleasant. So I need to own up to how I brought the truth to the attention of others because I contributed to creating something. Now, the other thing that could happen, you might have went to therapy, you might have grown up, you might have some awareness, and you're actually not creating that role, but you are seeing yourself in that role even when you're not. You're so scared of it that say that you are the hero in your family, if your superiors, your bosses, your supervisors are not constantly reassuring you that you're doing well, you might live in a dread that you're failing. And that might not be true about you. Or you might not be the clown anymore. You might not be the mascot. You might have found other ways of being, and people are fond of you and they're not irritated, and you are able to tolerate some emotional complexity in the workplace, but you keep thinking that people see you as a clown. And that is scary for you, or you imagine that it's so. So you might be super sensitive when people laugh off one of your jokes or something silly happens. It's important to become mindful and aware. What role did you have in your family? Do you notice that it's happening at work? And what are the different components? Is it happening at work because this is a very dysfunctional workplace? Is it actually happening, or are you so sensitive to being in that role that everything looks like it to you? And that, as usual, might require some in-depth work and really understanding yourself better. We're going to talk specifically to managers and how to respond to transference and countertransference and unconscious stuff that might come up at work. Managers are not therapists. They're not supposed to take care of their employees that way. However, that could make their interaction and their managing style really sophisticated and effective if they're aware of all this. That's for some other time, because I think we've been talking for a while.
Yeah, I think that's for the next week, is that we'll dive into some more of the strategies and what to see. And that's part of our goal here during these videos, right? Is to take some of our knowledge from the psychodynamic psychology world and bring it into the workplace. If you like hearing these videos, please let us know in the comments of what role you are. If you'd like to talk about one in more detail in an upcoming episode. And also, all of this is culminating in a presentation we're giving February 17th in the Grow and Learn Summit online. So if you're interested in learning about this and seeing this in a PowerPoint format or in a very tactically delivered one that you'd like to give to your team or to your work people, check that out. It's totally free. It's just something that we're doing to help get our name out there and to meet other cool developers, organized developers like ourselves. So that's all we got. Join us over the next couple of weeks as we dive more into family dynamics. Take care, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Should do that too. Bye.
Bye.